Today is December the 10th, 2020. My name is Tanya Finchum, and I'm with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program here at Oklahoma State University. With me today is Karen Hancock, wife of the late Will Hancock, who we'll hear about in a few minutes, and senior woman administrator in the OSU Athletic Department and assistant soccer coach. This interview is being recorded online and will be part of our The We Will Remember or Promise Oral History Collection. Will be part of that. So Karen was the first head coach and coach, period, I guess, for the OSU soccer team, and coached 11 seasons, was the head coach for 11 seasons, including 2006 when the Cowgirls won their first NCAA tournament.
Game.
Okay.
I wish we'd won the whole tournament. That would have been pretty sweet.
Okay.
but no.
Game. Okay. And if I've done my math correctly, you're coming up on 25 years with OSU and with the soccer program.
You are right.
Okay. Thank you for being here today. And by way of context for this interview, January 27th, 2001, a plane crashed carrying 10 men, including Will, associated with the Oklahoma State University's men's basketball program. And that day, the university and Cowboy community made a promise to always remember these 10 great individuals. Will had joined the OSU basketball program in the fall of 1996 as the media relations coordinator. And before we talk about Will and the promise, Karen's going to tell us a little bit about herself, beginning with when and where were you born?
I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and 1968, September of 1968. And that's where I grew up. And
you have siblings?
I do. I have one sister. She's 4 years younger than me, and she still lives in state.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where did you go to high school?
I went to Union High School, graduate of 1986.
And did you have a favorite subject or teacher?
Ooh, probably senior AP English, Mr. Weaver.
Okay.
Yeah.
And at the time you were graduating, what were your career plans?
Graduating high school?
Uh-huh. Did you know?
I was all over the place. I just wanted to play soccer is all I knew. Okay. And I was young enough that I could still play club soccer in Tulsa. I was a 17-year-old high school graduate, and the sport allows you to play while you're under 18. So I stayed in Tulsa and went to Tulsa Junior College for a year, mostly just so I could play soccer with my club team. And then beyond that, I actually had enrolled in Northeastern State University. I was going to go there with the thoughts that I would be a teacher. But the University of Tulsa brought on a women's soccer program around that same time, and they were looking for players. And I figured out a way to get myself to the University of Tulsa so that I could play some more soccer, be a college soccer player.
Did you live at home or on campus?
So my first 3 years, first 3 years, just to save money, I lived at home.
Okay.
And it was about a 20-minute drive for me.
So not bad.
But I worked that entire time. I was a custodian at a small office building, and I worked that entire time. And I got to where I could live live on campus, and my senior year. So that's what I did.
Cool. And what was your major?
My major was speech pathology. Got a degree in that. And I was in my final semester doing practicums when I decided that that's not really how I wanted to spend my days.
It's funny how that happens, isn't it?
Yeah, I loved the coursework, but it was just implementing it in the day-to-day. I just thought, I'm not going to be able to stay in such a small confine and do this day after day.
Well, then how did you transition into the soccer coach world?
Well, so I was always doing camps, every summer. So I was dipping my toe in the water there. And, at that point in time, we were given groups of kids to coach, and they were little kids, but we still were told, they're yours for the week. And I would do 5, 6, 7 weeks of camp every summer. And then when I finished up in the fall of 90, I got the opportunity to be a lay coach at Bishop Kelly High School that spring. And I did that, and that was my first real coaching gig. and I enjoyed that. And I went on from there to graduate school, and I was a graduate assistant coach and got my grad school paid for. And I went and did that over at the University of Arkansas Little Rock, now the Little Rock University. And I was there 3 years, and then I went from there to South Alabama, and then I got the opportunity to come up here.
And how did that happen? The OSU part.
I was actively looking for jobs closer to the state of Oklahoma, Kansas. Will and I were engaged at that stage, and we were both from this area. He was from Kansas City, and I'm, from Oklahoma. And so, there was an opening. I applied for it. Figured it was a long shot, and it was. But got an interview, and they hired me. So there you go.
With you being from Oklahoma, I'm assuming you'd already been to campus for other reasons.
I had some friends that went to school here, so I'd been over here for that, and I'd been to the tumbleweed, and I'd actually come over here. They used to hold a couple of Olympic development program camps over here, and I was over here for that a couple of summers, and I knew the campus, not like I do now, but a little bit.
Yeah, well, you knew it was someplace you'd be comfortable coming.
Well, not only that, but what you need to know about me and my family is, I grew up an OSU kid. And what I should actually backtrack and say is my parents went to school here, and I was born while they were in college, and I spent the first 6 months of my life over at the married student housing area, which is right next to the soccer field. So I've kind of come full circle.
Came home. So what was your maiden name?
Horstman. It's German. Yeah, it's Horstman.
So when you mentioned you had already met Will at that time, how did you two meet?
We met when I was at the University of Arkansas Little Rock. I had been there a year, and he came the second year I was there. And he was hired there as their sports information director, which would be called a media relations coordinator now. Yeah.
And where had he gotten his college education?
He went to the University of Kansas and went from there, and he worked 1 year at the University of Evansville, and went from there to Little Rock. And it was a great opportunity for him. I mean, we were both so young. I was in graduate school, and I was 23, about to turn 24, and I met him, and he was a 23-year-old sports information director at a Division I school, albeit a small school, right? They don't have football. It's just, basketball is their big sport there, but it was a big deal that he was hired that young.
And how did you meet? I mean, did someone introduce you, or you just crossed paths, or how did that happen?
So finally got an introduction, but I noticed him, the day that I returned to campus. They were doing some construction in the athletic department, and he was in a makeshift office where the mailroom was. Mm-hmm. And I was just going back in August and getting ready for the season, and I walk in the mailroom to get the mail, and there he is sitting at a little desk, and I'm thinking, well, he's new. So yeah, I noticed him right off, and then there was a meet and greet for the student athletes a couple weeks after that, and that's when I got an introduction.
What would a typical date be like in Little Rock at that time?
A lot of dinners and movies.
Okay.
Yeah. We would go to sporting events, but usually we were working them. Okay. He was always working the basketball games, and he would come and he would actually work the soccer games too. So we saw each other a lot, but he was having to work a lot. I was having to work a lot.
Had he played basketball?
No, not really. When he was growing up, he was a cross-country runner. He was a distance runner. Played a little bit of baseball when he was really young, but he ran through high school.
And how did he get interested in media relations?
I'd say his dad, who was working at the NCAA when I met Will, and before that he had worked for the Big 8 Conference, and before that, he worked at OU in sports, and he stayed. He's actually still working today, and he's still working for the college football playoff group. So there's sports ties there.
And so Will would have been born in Oklahoma?
Yeah, pretty sure he was born in Norman. Yeah.
Okay. But he chose to go to Kansas?
Well, they moved. He's from a small town in Oklahoma. Hobart is where his parents are from.
Okay.
And he lived in Hobart up until about fourth grade, and then moved to Kansas City when his dad took a job with originally the Big 8 conference, and then he took a job in the NCAA. And both those places at the time were in Kansas City, headquartered in Kansas City. So Will was in Kansas City from fourth grade till he graduated.
Okay. So he came by that naturally too then.
Yeah.
Well, how would you describe him, his personality and that sort of thing?
He was very easygoing, and he was fun. He was so smart. That's one of the main things, so smart, but very humble, right, about his intelligence. So he never, made people feel bad. But he was well versed on a number of topics, so he could really talk to anybody. And he was just kind, is what I would say. He was kind, really, really kind and gentle soul.
Did he have a sense of humor?
Oh, he was fun and funny both, yeah. Okay. I think part of that, comes with his intelligence. He was funny. He was funny.
And then how did he pop the question to you? Or did he, I guess?
Well, he did. And this was down when I was in Mobile at the University of South Alabama. And he was actually working up in Indianapolis at the time. And we were seeing each other once a month, at the least, right? And when we were doing when I left Little Rock, I left him. And then in a few weeks, I left him for a job, which I thought was a brilliant idea at the time. Turns out after a little bit of time, I thought that was maybe not so smart. But anyway, I left and went to Mobile. He, a few months later, left and took a job at the Midwestern Collegiate Conference, which was up in Indianapolis. And so we were dating long distance. And, we kind of had a rule. It's like we talked every day on the phone back in the day before cell phones. We had to get attached to a landline somewhere. Mm-hmm. And we were like, we're going to see each other at least every month, and during the soccer season, he always came to me. And then once the season finished for me and basketball started up for him, I'd make it up there. But he came down when I was in Mobile. I had been hearing that, I needed to go to a Mardi Gras bowl. Not bowl, a ball. And Mardi Gras is really big in New Orleans, as everybody knows, but it's also pretty big in Mobile, Alabama. And that's allegedly what they say down there is where it originated. That may be true. Don't hold me to that. I don't know. But I had some friends who were like, while you're here, you need to go to one of these. They're a lot of fun. Guys dress up in tails and, women wear really nice dresses and, there's a whole lot of alcohol. It's just a huge party. Okay. I was sold, so I was going to give that a go. So that's, the last weekish of February when those balls happen. And I had told Will, I think I really want to go to one of these balls because I don't know how many years I'll be here. And he was like, well, okay. Well, Karen, I'm too busy to go to something like that. It's basketball season. I can't make it down there that time of year. I'm like, yeah, I get it. I know. And I had a friend who was a guy. And I said, well, if you can't make it down here, I'll probably just ask him if he can go. And Will was like, well, okay. You could tell he was like, if that's what you really want to do. I said, we'll just be as friends, but, I just want to go. And it was about 2 days after that, he called me up and said, you haven't asked him to go yet, have you? And I said, no, not yet. I was probably going to this weekend. He goes, well, don't. I'm coming down there. And I was like, oh, okay, you freed yourself up, huh? And he goes, yeah, I'm coming down there. So I was like, okay. So we were going to that Mardi Gras ball, and he proposed right before we went there.
Totally unexpected.
A little bit unexpected for me. But I'm not very good about that, at seeing the signs coming. In hindsight, you're like, oh, of course that's what he was doing. But, it was surprising. Yeah.
And immediate, yes.
An immediate yes. Yes. Because my heart was very much there. Now, it was harder, actually the next day when we were kind of thinking a little bit more clearly. It's like, okay, we've agreed to get married, but you live in Indiana and I live in Alabama. So how's that going to work? And we were kind of like, well, we'll just figure it out. One of us will get a job up, in Indiana or down in Alabama. We'll just figure it out. or we'll go somewhere else entirely new together. And that's kind of what happened.
About how many miles between where you were and where he was?
I wouldn't know miles without looking it up, but it's easily a flight. I mean, you couldn't realistically drive it.
That was my next question. When you were seeing each other, did you drive it or fly it?
Always had a flight. It was too far.
It was a little expensive too over time.
It was, but it was a priority, so we just did it.
So that was in February. Then when were you married?
So it was close to an 18-month engagement. Got married not that June, but the June after that.
Okay,
1996.
96. Oh, right before you came. Well,
no,
you were already here.
Yeah, came here, took the job, and that was a big thing. Is that I consulted with him. I didn't just say, "Hey, I'm going to Oklahoma." I said, "Well, obviously we're getting married this year, and just got this job opportunity. Should I take it or not?" And he said, "Yep, that's where we want to be. So yeah, it seems like a good idea. So let's do it."
And Stillwater's a little closer than Alabama to where he was.
Well, not really. I mean, it was still going to be a flight, but the plan was, I had gone up and I'd talked to some people in Indianapolis about maybe a coaching opportunity, really just to be a volunteer somewhere to get my foot in the door in the area. And he had actually interviewed down in Mobile at the school, but he wasn't real excited about doing that. But this opportunity came up, and it was like, well, it's a good job for me, so I'll go. And then maybe something will open up for you and you'll be able to come as well. We just didn't know the timing of it. We went into it a little bit with a leap of faith that, something would open up, and we kind of had a drop dead point. Like if he didn't have something here, he was just going to come here to just live and tend bar until something came up.
And where did you get married?
In Tulsa. In Tulsa, yeah.
Did you all write your own vows?
No. Just traditional vows.
I figured with him, writing, he might have written his own.
He could have. We could have, but no, we were both way too traditional to do that.
And let's talk a little bit about his likes and dislikes. What kind of music did he like?
U2, The Police, Simon and Garfunkel. Okay. In fact, if he listened to more than those groups, I'm not even sure who they were now. REM, he liked REM. There were some other people, but that's pretty much it.
No country in there, like
no
Garth or anyone.
No, he was not a country guy.
Did he play any musical instruments?
He did. He played the trombone in high school and in college. Played for the KU band. Yeah.
Ah. Okay, so that's how he got into the sporting events then, in college.
In college, yeah.
Pep band, yeah. Did he have a favorite movie, or at least a genre of movies?
That's a good question. We went to see a lot of movies. We liked movies. I don't know what his favorite would be. I mean, he was a Star Wars fan. We went, when the Phantom Menace came out, and this was, a year or so before he died, we went to the midnight showing, stood in line here in Stillwater to go in and watch it. We were still young enough and crazy enough to do something like that.
Yes.
Watch a midnight movie until it was over at 2:30 in the morning, and then go home and go to work the next morning.
It was fun.
It was fun, and we were young enough to do it, made it work.
Did he have a favorite food or dessert? Was he a barbecue fan or
he liked cheese. he liked pizza. If I was ever traveling, I learned that he subsisted on pizza, frozen pizza specifically.
Okay.
He liked to make nachos. He really loved queso, cheese dip. If we were going to a gathering, I would offer to take something, but then he'd be like, "Well, we need to take some cheese dip too." Well, why? Because it's cheese dip. So
as newlyweds, I'm assuming you did most of the cooking at home.
Yeah, if there was any cooking going on, it was me.
Okay.
Unless you count heating the pizza from the freezer, that was him.
Okay. And how did the job opportunity for him come about for here at OSU?
So the assistant media relations coordinator, Mike Strauss at the time, took a job up in Utah, which left a vacancy here. And that was October of 96. And he interviewed for the job and got it.
Things worked out.
Things did work out.
Didn't take too awfully long then from February to...
Well, actually, June is when we got married. So July, August, it was 4 months.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Did you all buy a house here? Did you buy a home?
We did, but not initially. First couple of years we lived in an apartment, but yeah, we did buy a house in 98. Yep.
And at that point planned to be here for a while.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
And then at some point you decided to start a family?
We did. I got pregnant in 2000 and Andy was born in November of that year. Yeah.
How was that first day or two bringing her home from the hospital?
Rough, because we didn't know what the heck we were doing. And she was pretty jaundiced too. So we actually had to go back to the hospital and get her under some blue light for a little while. But, I can remember, the little stuff of just, she would cry and we just didn't know what was wrong. And you do everything you thought that you're supposed to do, feed her, change her, burp her, everything, hold her. And sometimes she was just having none of it, just wanted to cry. So I can remember one night, him calling his mom and saying, "What do we do?" And she was like, "Well, turn on the hairdryer, see if that works, just that noise, or put her on the dryer in her car seat and run the dryer, and or take her out for a drive." And so we did all those things.
And any of them work?
Yeah, they actually did. Not the dryer as much, but not the hair dryer, but the actual dryer, her sitting on that actually usually worked pretty well.
Okay. I hadn't heard the hair dryer thing either, but dryer I've heard that vibration helps.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Any favorite stories of him with her?
Yeah, the thing about him is he loved being a dad. You could just tell it was just such a big deal. And I would say Will tended towards being a workaholic, right? And it was very compelled to be responsible and dutiful and do the extra stuff when it came to his job. And as soon as Andy was born, that guy kind of went away. And he was coming home early and he was going in late and he was just taking every opportunity he could to be near her, around her. And, his weekends were the best when he had free time and he could just hold her. And she was so little, then, she couldn't really do anything except for lay there. So he would just hold her and he would just beam, is all I could say. You could already tell he was completely in love with her, and I'd be in the kitchen doing some dishes or something. And he'd be like, "Karen, come here. I'd be like, "What? I'm doing dishes." He's like, "No, come here." So I would go in there thinking it's something really important. And all he wants to do is just point at her and say, "She's so cute. Just look at her. She's so cute." And I'm like, "Yeah, babe, I know. But the dishes." So, it was just little stuff like that. He loved being a dad.
He didn't mind changing a dirty diaper?
Didn't mind that stuff at all. Now, what was funny, and I would crack up at this, is like he could sleep like a champ. So if I was holding her and he was like on the couch right next to us, if she started crying, he would sleep straight through that. Yeah. So I was always like, well, this is a little concerning that he's not going to wake up, like if she's crying. But once he was awake, yeah, he was great. No problem with diapers or in anything.
How did you choose the name?
So Andy's name is actually Andrea Bailey Hancock, and Will's dad's mom, her name was Annie Bailey Hancock. And I don't know if this is why, but it didn't hurt that I had a couple of players at the time, around that time, that were named Andrea. And I liked them both. and so they didn't ruin the name. And I liked A names, so I don't know. We just gravitated towards that one, and we wanted to call her Andy for short. Now that she's 20 years old, she goes by Andrea most of the time, but those in the family call her Andy. And we just kind of thought, well, it's not quite Annie Bailey Hancock, but it's Andy Bailey Hancock. So I don't know. That's how.
Did she attend OSU?
She did not. She is currently a college student at Northwestern University up in Evanston, Illinois.
Oh, she's away from home then.
She is. Well, not right at the moment. She's here because of COVID, but.
Yes, I forget that. And how could I forget that? Yes. Well, for those of us who might not know, what would Will's job entail, like on a day-to-day basis? What are a few things he would have to be doing?
Well, he was a liaison between most of the media outlets and men's basketball and men's golf. So he wrote all the press releases for men's basketball and men's golf. So I'm not going to be the best at answering what he did totally on a day-to-day basis, but he when you see a press release come out, it's over the internet now. He would have written those, right? Back in the day, you would write them and send them to the papers, and that's how you would get information. So if you saw something on TV or you read something in the paper, a lot of times a lot of that information filtered from him to them.
So did that writing skill transfer over to other things? Like, did he write poetry or anything like that?
No, but he was a good writer, and he was a good editor.
Okay.
Yeah. No poems.
What part of the job do you think was the most important to him? And what was important to him about his work?
Well, I think he just loved being a part of a team and being around the sports. It's fun, and being a part of the competition and just, being a part of the team and helping make it work. And really, he's always advocating for the guys, trying to get them recognition. It's a big part of it is just trying to get the program recognition and the individuals in the sports recognition.
Did he have issues or challenges when OSU was playing Kansas?
That's funny because he was very much a Jayhawk through and through, especially in basketball. But, he got the opportunity to work with Coach Sutton here, which was a really great experience. And I would tell you this, that, between 96 and that January of 01 when he died, that there was a little shift going on to where he was coming around to being a cowboy. And that was kind of fun to see.
Even for that one game, or maybe even part of that game?
I would say even for that game, he started getting there. He was getting there. Yeah.
So he had a little bit of orange in his closet.
Oh, totally. And, and he was our program's biggest supporter. Obviously, he wanted soccer to do very well. But he felt really fortunate that he was getting to work with, at the time, two of the strongest programs on campus, men's basketball and certainly men's golf with Coach Holder. He enjoyed what he did.
He had a mentor or someone that he was trying to be like in regards to that type of work?
Well, I'd say that was his dad always.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And had Will lived, I don't know if we would still be in Stillwater or at Oklahoma State. There's a big part of me that thinks he would have gone into administration in the athletic world at a little higher level, whether that be, at another university or maybe even here or at a conference or maybe, like I said, Bill works for the college football playoff right now. I mean, it could have been maybe Will ended up working for him. I don't know.
Did he have a dream job that he would just talk about occasionally?
I don't know if there was a dream job, but he certainly talked about maybe moving up in administration, probably just for financial reasons, because the position he was in didn't pay all that well.
I guess yours may have paid more.
Yeah, it did.
A little more.
A little bit. Truthfully, not that much at the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you did a very good job coming in and getting that program started and up and running, and quickly showing success.
Yeah. Well, it was a challenge to come in February and start playing in September, or August actually, but that's what we did. Yeah.
That's what you did.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're up to January 2001. Do you want to get into that a little bit now?
Sure.
Just start wherever you want to start for that particular time period.
Well, it's hard to know where to start.
Do you recall that day at all? What before the bad news?
Sure. I spoke to him that Saturday. I was driving. We had cell phones then. I was driving to Tulsa to pick up a recruit from the airport. And that was the last time I spoke to him. And we were talking on the phone. And a couple things I remember talking about is one, we talked about we should go skiing because we love snow skiing and hadn't been in a little while. And it was just really hard to do during the basketball season for him. And he basically was saying stuff like, Karen, I can't go skiing during the winter months. I can't get away. And I was just, saying, well, if it's important enough, we'll figure out a way to do it. I mean, whose life is this? It's our lives. We should try to figure out what we can do with our lives. You have to enjoy it. So we talked about that a little bit. And then the other thing we talked about was the Super Bowl was the next day. And we were talking about, well, what are we going to do for Super Bowl? I don't know. And he said, let's just talk about it when I get home tonight. And I said, okay.
Make queso.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously that conversation never happened about what to do for Super Bowl.
How did you hear about it?
So I'm at home. It's just me and my daughter. And my daughter's 10 weeks old at the time. And, when they're that little, they require so much care and attention. And so I was holding her. I was just sitting in the living room watching TV. And I wasn't watching like a local news channel. I was watching, a movie channel like HBO or something. And I was just holding her and sitting there. And she was fussy. And I just kept thinking, man, I wish Will would get home, give me a little relief here, because I'd like to just go make myself a hot chocolate or something. But I need to wait for him to get home to do that. And just sitting there, and my sister calls me and said, hey, are you watching TV? And I said, well, yeah, I'm watching a movie. And she goes, no, are you watching local news or anything like that? I said, no. She goes, well, maybe you should turn it on just because, I don't know, they're talking about an OSU plane that has been lost or something. And I was like, what? And it was, I don't know, it's probably a little bit before 8 when she called. And, I was thinking he should be home now, unless he's been kind of dawdling or he ran by the office or whatever. But, normally he would have called. So it put me into a little bit of a state of concern, no doubt. So turned on a local news channel. Of course, they were in regular programming, so nothing was on. And I hadn't been sitting there much longer when the phone rang again. And it was a news affiliate out of Denver who was asking to talk to Will to see if he was there so that they could ask some questions about the plane crash. And that was the first time I'd heard the words plane crash, right? And so I was like, well, listen, he's not here is all I can tell you. And he's not picking up his phone. I don't know what to tell you, but I can't help you. And that guy felt so bad. Immediately, you could tell he was like, oh, no. And, of course, I start to get pretty worked up internally at that stage. And got off the phone with him. And then that put me into a state of like, I need to get some answers and figure something out. So I got out the phone book, the Yellow Pages, and looked up Eddie Sutton's home phone number and called his house, which I'd never done that before. And so I called the house, and Patsy picks up. And I tell you, hey, Patsy, it's Karen, just, calling to see if I can get some information. What is going on? And you could tell she was upset, could hear it in her voice, and basically just said, Karen, I just, they're all up at the offices. I don't know. You probably need to call up there. I just don't know. You just need to call up there. I said, okay, well, what's the number? And so she got me the number, and I said, okay, thanks. And so then I called up to the basketball offices, and somebody answered the phone. I think it was one of the assistant coaches at the time. And, you could tell it was chaotic, and they weren't wanting to, spend time on a phone if they didn't need to be. And I was just kind of like, hey, I understand things are busy or whatever, but this is Karen Hancock, wife of Will. Just need to get some information because Will's not responding to calls from me or, and he's not home yet. And as soon as they found out who I was, they immediately said, oh, hold on just a minute. So, the line went quiet there. What felt like forever, it probably wasn't very long, a minute or two maybe. But, what I learned later was Coach Sutton was just on the phone with one of the other family members. And, was working on getting off so that he could take my call because he wanted to be the one to tell everybody. And, got on the phone with him, and, he just said, listen, I don't know how to tell you this, but Will was on that plane. And, I'm still quickly trying to piece everything together. And I'm like, yeah, okay, he was on the plane. I'm hearing it crash, but does that mean, what does that mean exactly? It crashed, some crashes aren't that bad. And so I asked him, I said, so were there any survivors? And he said, no. I'm sorry, no. And so, well, that, I don't know how to describe it. I mean, it just put me into shock. I didn't know what to do. It's like, my heart was breaking, but my mind was still kind of like, well, I still wanted to know information. And, I even asked him, I was kind of like, I just processed no survivors, which meant Will in there. But I also was curious, and I wanted to know, well, who else? Because I knew most of those guys. And so I asked him, I said, who else was on the plane? He started rattling off the names. And that was heartbreaking. Pat and Brian and Jared and Dan and Nate. And I mean, just, well, I needed help at that moment badly. But there I am at home with a 10-week-old and Coach Sutton, who wants to help but knows he can't stay on the phone with me. And he even said, he goes, is anybody there with you, Karen? And I said, no. And he goes, we'll send somebody over. And I was thinking, oh, okay. I was like, I don't know what that's going to do, but okay. And got off the phone, and then, I was a mess. I was a mess. Andy was still crying. She was still fussy. Maybe she knew something was going on. I don't know. Maybe it was my state. But I just kept thinking, I've got to get my baby to stop crying. So I go in and I change her diaper, what is a very dry diaper. I'm changing, putting a new dry diaper on. I'm trying to give her a bottle. I'm trying all sorts of stuff. And I'm just processing it. And I think I got to call my mom. So I call my mom on her cell. And well, they had just, they were also piecing things together. And they had been down at my sister's, who was in Oklahoma City at the time. And they were actually on their way driving up to Stillwater when I called, and she basically said, Karen, we're on our way. We're still probably 30 minutes away, but we're on our way. And I was like, oh, okay. And then, I was just kind of a mess. And I'll never forget this, as I was on the phone with my mom, and I'm actually holding the phone. It's not a landline, but it's one of those, it's not a cell phone. It's the other kind, the cordless landlines. And I'm holding Andy. So my hands are full. And I was standing kind of close to my front door, and my front door just starts opening up, and in comes one of my good friends at the time and her husband. And literally, I'm on the phone with my mom, and I'm really starting to lose it. Lose it. And my knees are just buckling. And I just fall to the ground, and I swear to you, my friend came in there and just swooped Andy out of my arm as I was crumbling to the ground, and took her away. And she and her husband just stayed with me what felt like all night. And then, people just started rolling in. My family got there. And then a lot of my team came over. A whole lot of my team came over, if not all of them. Well, the recruit that was there came over. With the student host that was in charge of hosting her that weekend, and just, a mess.
Yeah.
Everyone was just an emotional wreck.
Didn't have the words or know the words to help.
Everyone wanted to help, but they're dealing with their own grief. There's not everyone's in shock that this has even happened. Everyone's upset because, everybody knew everybody. Our players knew those basketball guys.
It's like a second family.
Yeah. So everyone that came over, literally dozens of people over to my house that night, and everybody had a tie, and everybody was affected. And it wasn't like, oh, coach just lost her husband. That was part of it. But there was also, we just lost all these guys, and we knew some of those guys. And it was tough. Real tough.
Well, what helped you the most getting through those next, 2 or 3 days? Just,
I don't know,
going through the motions.
People taking care of me, people taking care of my daughter. I pretty much immediately became, felt like incapacitated, felt like I was completely unable to care for my child. My parents specifically, but beyond that, other family members and friends. It was a revolving door of people coming by to help.
Well, who did the department send who paired you up with?
Well, it's hard to sit there and say, what. I know Dave Martin was kind of assigned to me, but it would be unfair to say Dave was the guy, because There were so many people from the department who came by.
Okay.
Everybody wanted to help if they could. It's just, yeah.
And then the university went into the planning of the memorial service in Gallagher.
Yeah. So I'm told. This is definitely one of those times. It's like I was aware it was being planned, but I sure didn't have anything to do with anything on that. Okay. I planned on showing up. Yeah.
Having to grieve in public space.
Yeah. Obviously at that time I'd never, nothing like that had ever happened to me. And then certainly, my spouse, and then it was so public to boot. All of it. There was a lot coming at me all at once. Never mind the fact that I was a brand new mom on top of that. So, yeah, I remember going to the memorial in Gallagher. I was there. There was a lot of people there.
Yeah, I was one of them.
But, I am not going to be the best person to ask about details on that.
That's okay. I didn't expect you to be. That's fine. And then they got into the discussion of creating the memorials at the site in Colorado, and then one in the arena. Do you want to talk a little bit about either or both of those?
Sure.
Have
I was
any input in the design for either one?
No, not of the design. Not of the
Okay.
design. Obviously, the family members chose what the inscription was,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the same at both places.
Okay.
The memorials are not the same, but they're similar, right? The same kind of
Okay.
granite is used, and the same kind of etching and all that stuff. The same wording, and it was just all I can really remember thinking is, well, this is really nice, and probably the right thing to do. And I'm glad they're doing it. And I'm glad they're doing it both places. And I love that the memorial here is in that lobby down by the academic center in Gallagher-Iba. A lot of people walk past it. Even if they don't know what it is, it kind of explains what it is if people want to stop and look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's there. It's visible. It's not hidden away. And so it can be, it can spark a conversation for someone to at least know a little bit about the history, what happened. And then I've been out to the memorial in Colorado a few times, and, it's very touching that, there's new things there every time I go. People leave shirts and basketballs and notes, and, it just, shows that people will remember, care enough to stop, leave something behind. So that's great. And the people in that community, there's some of the first responders that had a lot to do with, not only the accident at the time, but implementation of the memorial out there, and really some of the upkeep that's done. I know some of them come out there and they just kind of sweep stuff up every now and then.
Did you go out for the dedication?
I did.
For that one?
And that was nice. They felt like they took just about anybody who wanted to go from the family out there. And it was nice. We're all still, in many ways, we're all still healing, but we were very much still healing then. And there was comfort in gathering as a group.
Yeah. I wondered about that.
Yeah. Well, for me anyway, I guess I can't say that for everybody, but there certainly was for me. There was comfort, and just, you knew that it was so hard on everyone, and that we were all going through maybe not the same thing, but a similar thing, from the same event. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the same feelings, we just, all the family members, I think, just want to make sure that their guys don't get forgotten, because they were pretty great guys.
Mm-hmm. Well, how did you come up with the inscription? Did you have help, or was it I did
with his parents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was me and Bill and Nikki. Yeah, it was restricted to a certain number of words. So, you had to try to really focus on what you wanted to put in there. And it's like, oh man, this is going to be up like forever. So let's, try not to screw this up. But, it's where our heads certainly were at the time, and we felt good about it then. I still feel good about it today. So
I like it. It tells you a little bit of who he was. The words were chosen really carefully, it seems.
Yeah, and I think so too. And Will really was a wordsmith, and that comes straight from his parents. They are too. So a lot of that is credit to them.
I guess I should have said, did he have siblings? He had a brother too, didn't he?
He has a brother as well, also about 4 years younger than him. So we had very similar situation. They were both the oldest of a 2-person sibling family, 4 years apart.
Okay, I thought I remember reading that.
Yeah.
And the inscription's the same there as it is here.
Correct.
And then there's the etching of an image.
Yes.
It's the same in both places.
Yeah. And that photo was less than a year old, so that was pretty accurate representation of what he looked like at the time.
And were you at, I'm assuming you were at that dedication as well, the one in Gallagher?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And it was
And
nice. I mean, the school works very, very hard, I think, with the families of those men to let them know that, what happened is horrible. We're sorry. And we're just doing as much as we know to do to let you know that we won't forget. And, we're all hurting a little bit.
right. And each anniversary, they just kind of low key. It's at the family's request. I'm assuming.
Yeah. Yeah. I find that for me, the end of January is hard.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer not having too much added pressure to that time. So for me, it's a big part of me that just kind of wants to go crawl in a hole for the day. And sometimes I kind of do that, but other times there's events and, I'll show up to them for support. But that's just me. I know for my daughter, who's 20 years old right now, we were actually just talking last night about she, goes to school up in the Chicago area, and they are going to, looks like, have them back on campus in January. And she was talking about, I want to come back for the anniversary date. It's the 20th anniversary date. It's a big deal for me. I want to be back. And I said, well, you can come back, babe. We can arrange that. I said, but I don't think there's going to be an event going on this year. And she was like, what? And I said, well, it's COVID. It's COVID times. We're not going to gather. And she's like, oh, yeah, right. So, but in normal years, non-COVID years, it's really nice that they do something around a basketball game that time of year. And it is fairly low key, and I appreciate that. And then, there's the Remember the 10 run that happens in April. Also, I have to say, in non-COVID years, because that's been put on hiatus as well. Yeah. But that has been, I have found, an easier time to just be a little bit more celebratory, if you could say. If you can actually look back and reflect more and just let it be a little bit more of a celebration of their life instead of it just feeling so heavy. It's a lighter time in April. Maybe part of it's the weather. In January, a lot of times you'll get, the overcast day and it's cold and, it just kind of brings up memories of, oh, this is like that day back in 2001. You don't usually quite get those days like that in April, so it's a little easier.
Did you normally participate in the run?
Oh, yeah. Well, I walk now. I really can't run anymore. I got a long-term issue with my foot now that really prohibits me from running anymore, but I walk. I ran in the early days, but now I walk.
Do many of the other family members come back for it?
Yes. Some families come back more often than others. But my family, it's almost like a miniature reunion is what it's turned into. The timing fits well for most everybody. It's not Thanksgiving or Christmas, so it's it's like, hey, this is another time earlier in the year to do this. So we'll have 25 or so people come.
Okay, that's a positive thing then.
Yep.
And then the other thing the university did, and you may have had a role in that too, is starting the scholarship in Will's name.
Well, yes, definitely had a lot to do with that. At the time of the crash, a lot of people donated money to try to help, and they just didn't know what to do. And a lot of people donated a certain amount of money in Will's name, and the university held it for a little while, and they alerted us to this, growing account. And our family just decided that a really good way to honor him and his memory was to create a scholarship in his name. So we did that.
Do you keep up with many of the recipients?
I don't do a good job of keeping up with recipients, but we do know who the recipient is. Sure. And we get a letter and that kind of stuff. And I work in the athletic department, so sometimes, I will see them and I kind of know who they are. But no, I don't really hit them up too much. I did for a couple of years there. I did go out of my way to introduce myself and maybe take them to a dinner or something. But I don't know. I kind of felt like that was a lot of pressure on them.
That's true too. So, and that's been going on, what, for 15 years, 20? Probably not quite 20.
Not quite 20, but probably coming up on it, not too far off it. 17, 18.
And they usually announce the recipient at one of the basketball games.
Yes. Now, again, I don't know if that happens this year, but yeah, we've done that in the past. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, COVID's messed up everything this year.
It has. You know, the recipient usually gets selected in July or August. But yeah, we usually wait till a basketball game to do a presentation, just a recognition. But in a year like this year, that's not happening. They're just going to get a letter.
Well, and then I was reading the other thing that's not OSU related is that they named a room for him in the Metrodome in Kansas. Did I get that wrong?
Is there a Metrodome in Kansas?
Well, maybe I got it wrong. With the Will Hancock Media Coordination Center.
Well, I don't know what all is out there in his name, so I'm not going to say.
Well, then I better not say either because they may have it wrong.
But our press room here has a plaque of him, but I don't know about, there may be a room at one of the arenas in Kansas City that bears his name.
It's wherever they had the NCAA finals from when his dad was doing things.
Well, part of me wants to say the Metrodome. I was thinking maybe that's in a different state. I think
it may be.
Might be Minneapolis.
Okay.
Might be Minnesota where that is. I'm not sure. I would have to Google the Metrodome, so I don't know.
I apologize. I should have done that before.
That's okay. That's okay. You may be right. It may be Kansas City.
I'm probably not right.
But the Big 12 Conference Office has a Will Hancock intern position, which is nice that his name's associated with that.
Okay.
So that's cool.
And I read somewhere that his brother named his son.
He did.
For Will.
He did. So the interesting thing there is not only did Nate and Kristen name their first child William after Will, but a lot of Will's friends also named their sons Will. So there is at least 5 guys, young men, because they're all between 13 and 18 now, roughly, that run around with the name Will because of Will. Yeah.
Well, good characteristics to name someone after from what you have said.
Yeah. Well, he didn't mess up the name, right? Yeah, he didn't mess it up.
No, it doesn't seem to. Well, during all of this, who helped you through was there someone in particular that was a constant that helped you through this entire period?
Yeah. My parents helped me a great deal, mostly from the standpoint of just allowing me to go do what I needed to do to grieve and work through the process. They really came in and helped raise an infant at the time and really stuck with it all the way through now. They moved, for all intents and purposes, the day after the crash. There was one of them with me from then on in Stillwater. And then they ended up building a house. They came to me about 3 weeks after the crash, maybe a month after the crash, and said, listen, my dad had actually just retired at the time. My mom wasn't, tied to a job that would have kept her in Tulsa. And they said, listen, we're not tied down to Tulsa. If you want us to move over here to Stillwater to help with Andy, we will. And I was like, okay, please. And they did. They up and did. And they built a house, and they live about 1.5 miles away from me. And they've been as close to parents to my daughter as anybody could be, beyond being a parent. They helped with day-to-day raising of her from the time she was little. So them in particular, and then for me, a couple of people in my life, Amy Weeks, I would say, was a very good friend then. And she's actually the one that scooped her out of my arms when I was about to drop her, when I was on the phone with my mom the night of the crash going down. And Susie Burks, who was director of university counseling at the time, and has since retired from that position, but is still a friend to this day. And credit her a great deal with really helping me figure out that it was okay to go on living and give that a try. So, those four in particular.
Okay. Well, since we're into the COVID period and there's so many other people grieving too, or is there advice you might offer?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you lose a loved one who's very, very close to you, such as a spouse, I relied on other people who contacted me immediately after Will's death, and they're out there. You just don't always think about that they're out there, but there's other people who, became widows as a young person. I was 32 when it happened to me. Depending on your vantage point, that can seem kind of old. I know when I was 18, 32 seemed ancient, but, for most of us, it still seems pretty young. Mm-hmm. And, people came out and said, listen, it's a huge change in your life. Try your best to not make any rash decisions. Like, don't quit your job yet. Don't move out of your house yet. Just don't make really, really big decisions like that if you can help it. Because let things settle just a little bit, give it some time, which you're like, I don't need time, I know what to do. You think but you don't. You need time for the dust to settle so that you can reflect on what you really want to do. And so I thought that was very good advice, not to make really big decisions if that could be helped. And so I did my best with that. Most of the advice was at least a year, like wait a year, and then however you feel, move on, press on. And then, I would tell you that I was very, very blessed to have the support system, family and friends that I had. And I would say if anybody has that type of group, use them, lean on them. Don't be ashamed or embarrassed to say that you need help. I think asking for help is a learned skill. It doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. It certainly doesn't come natural to people who are extremely competitive, I don't think, which was certainly my case. But if you have people that you can reach out to them. And the other pieces I would say is if you have access to counseling, use it. Because I know that's not for everybody. And what I would say about that is even if it doesn't feel right at first, maybe it's not a good fit. Maybe your counselor's not a good fit. I would say maybe don't give up on it quite that easy, because sometimes you just need to find the right one. Yeah.
Well, did you develop any traditions or rituals that helped you, or that you still do to this day? I don't know. That may be a weird question, Karen.
Well, I don't know if we really have any, rituals, but I kind of sit there and go, well, the Remember the 10 run has kind of become a little bit of a ritual, and it's nice that we do that. I know that on January 27th itself, I often do get with Susie Burks, if not for all of the day, at least part of the day. So that has become, I don't know if it's a ritual, but it's a little bit of a tradition, and it helps. It always helps me, and it's comforting to know people that knew Will or knew what it was like that day or at that time. I take comfort in that. There's so many people out there, especially younger people, that, they might not have been alive at the time, or they were too young to know, what really happened. But for those that were here and can speak to how it impacted them, well, it'll turn my head, right? It'll make me listen, and I appreciate that.
Well, one of the reasons I asked that, I had read that you and your father-in-law and brother-in-law had gone to a baseball game, keeping with the tradition that Will had with his friends.
Yeah.
Opening day.
So yeah, that is another tradition, which went by the wayside this past year because of COVID. But we'll resume that once we can. But yeah, Kansas City Royals opening day, his buddies, some of them that have sons named Will now. Yeah, they have a Will Hancock group, and every year one guy takes the lead on this, and he reaches out to us and says, opening day, is this date? Will you be able to join us? And more often than not, we do. It works in the schedule where we can get up there and do it. Play hooky for a day and go to a Royals game. But it's always a really nice thing. It's we go and we tailgate and hang out and catch up. And, they flash something real quickly on the marquee at the Royals Stadium that the group is there, along with dozens of other groups, by the way. It's not like, we're the only ones there. But, yeah, it's a nice thing.
Well, let's see. We've covered a lot. Am I forgetting to ask you something? What would you like OSU students and future students and fans to know about Will that we haven't already covered?
He was just one of the good guys. I mean, it was just, I feel like everyone that didn't get to meet him got robbed, is how I feel all the time. Certainly I feel like I got robbed because I didn't get to have a long marriage and life with him. And my daughter got robbed, and, unborn children got robbed and all that kind of stuff. But you feel like he was one of the people that made the place better, made the department better, made athletics better, made the community better, made the town better, made the planet better. And so anytime you lose people like that, it's tough. It's hard. It's hard.
Good legacy. I had read someone, maybe, I don't know if it was you or someone had said that the part for the scholarship you choose, the point you want to make with the scholarship is that you can be good at your job and be kind while doing it.
Yeah.
Characteristic of Will, I'm sure.
Yes, without question. Without question. He was really good at, handling harder situations, I think, and people who would get upset. I mean, he had really great perspective on things, and he was a kind and gentle soul. And it shone through with everything that he did. But some people even ask me, like, did he ever get mad? Like he was just one of those kind of guys. I'd be like, well, of course he got mad, but it was kind of funny watching him get mad because, it didn't come naturally to him. So it was, I hate to say it, you almost wanted to laugh at him a little bit, but yeah, he had emotions just like everybody else. But yeah, he was very slow to anger and all that kind of stuff. So, and he didn't get angry very often. He was just a super easygoing, smart, kind, nice guy.
Wouldn't raise his voice when he got angry. Would he raise his voice?
He wasn't a yeller, really.
Wasn't a yeller?
No, he wasn't a yeller. No. But, you could tell if he got mad at something, he would express it. He was good with words. I mean, he was able to communicate. No, but he wasn't a yeller. He wasn't a screamer. He didn't, he didn't get physical. I mean, he just wasn't that kind of guy.
Did he always remember anniversaries? Your anniversaries?
Yes. He was very good about that.
Yeah.
Now, he did buy me a mixer one time for my birthday, which I was like, no, not a mixer. But he was, he was just kind of a typical guy from that standpoint of he had just seen me one day trying to make a cake, and all I had was a handheld mixer, and he got me a nicer big Sunbeam one, and he just thought he was being helpful. But I was like, it's really not what your wife wants for her birthday, just so you know. But yeah, he was really great about all that kind of stuff.
Well, let me back up just a minute. When you said no, don't make major decisions so soon afterwards, it took you a few years before you decided to step back from being the head coach.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about that just a little bit? How you came to that decision?
Yeah, I would say that, at that point in time, Andy was, six-ish years old, I would say. And, there's just certain things you have to do with the head coaching position that you don't as an assistant, that it frees up time, and when Will died, I started seeing what the most valuable commodity to me was, and it was time. It's not money, it's time. And I got into a place where I was very aware of, you only have so much time. I mean, my daughter only has so much time at certain ages, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was not very happy with, the demands, so professionally not real happy with some things like that. And I've been working with a guy who would have loved to have had that opportunity. And, we've been working for a while, and it just seemed like it was a good idea if all parties were agreeable to it. And, there was a little bit of hesitancy just because it's a little bit of an unknown. It's like, this is scary. This is unusual. I don't know how this is going to go. But it was the best thing I could have done at the time. And hindsight proved for me that it was the right thing for me personally. It was the right thing for my daughter. It was the right thing for us. Mm-hmm. So I'm very, very grateful to, Colin is the one who took over, and he was the one that had been with me since we started in '96. And we'd worked a couple years at another university before that. And then, we're just still here together at the same school 25 years later, no matter which title which each other was wearing. It's unusual. There's not many places out there that can do that or have had that kind of longevity with the same people. And it's been pretty cool. Like I said, for me personally, it was very, very good. But even professionally, it's worked out pretty well. We've had some good groups come through here, and it's we've done all right success-wise. So it's been good.
And you have a new stadium.
And we have a new stadium that, I tell you what, we have to just pinch ourselves continually about how great that we have it now with that stadium, especially coming from where we came from. Colin and I, we are ultra aware of what we had when we started in '96, and where we were for years as far as a lack of really nice facilities. And what we have now, thanks to the Neil Patterson family, we just sometimes still can't believe it. We're so lucky in that aspect, so fortunate, so blessed.
When was the first team fielded? Was it
96?
You came in 96 and you played your first game in 96?
We played that August with a team. Now, Colin and I had just come from the University of South Alabama, and we had 5 or so kids transfer from there to come up with us. But the rest were Oklahoma and Texas kids for the most part. Some were kids that had played on the club team the year before. That was a club team here. And we just had a mishmash of players that we put together to field a team. Mm. And actually did all right. I mean, we won 11 games, I think, that year. I mean, it was surprising that we won as many games as we did.
I'm thinking then this coming August will be 25 years.
I think that's right.
Of the team. So you'll have to plan. Maybe bring the first team back.
Right, yeah.
Well, virtually, maybe with COVID still.
Well, hey, listen, I'm hopeful that the vaccine changes our outlook for the fall next year.
How has that changed what you're doing now? The COVID part?
Well, we test a lot, right? When we're in season. So as far as once we get out there on the field, it's not that different for the players for practice and games. It's just everything that's off the field that's so different. Because the moment you're off, I mean, you got to mask up, you got to distance, and it's just that's not natural for a team, right? And it's not really great for building a sense of togetherness. You just asking your kids to not socialize with each other a whole lot and keep your distance, and just things that are just not natural for anyone, much less a college age athlete on a team. It's just, yeah. So I look forward to the day where we can be back together and people don't get so afraid to be within arm's distance of each other, sit elbow to elbow.
Well, I'm hopeful for next fall too. Would be nice.
Yeah.
Maybe even early summer would be great.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, I've asked all of my questions. Is there anything else you want to add or say, since this is on the record for the record?
Nope, I feel all right with it.
Okay, then I'll conclude with something that I borrowed from Steve Buzzard from 2006. He wrote something, I was reading it. It said, "Each new sunrise and each new season has brought even sharper and more beautiful memories of the 10 incredible men that we lost that night." So I thank you for sharing with us your memories of Will and introducing us to him. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for doing this, Tanya. I appreciate it.
You're quite welcome.